enough of this chit-chat. Let's get to it then.
I've been playing Fury Warrior since I started in Vanilla, and I am almost 2k in BFA, patch 8.15, and in Legion I was almost 4400, which was decent back then. I think the top people around 7k when I was 4400, to put it in perspective. I'm going to give you a Fury Warrior guide to try and be as best as you can be, as we are not the best class, as you probably know. So, before we get into it, let's go into the competition. Who is our competition? For playing Fury in high keys, or even low keys for that matter, we need to look at what our competition is, because we need the spot in the keys. How can we close the gap? How can we get that invite? Because I hear so often people saying like they're not getting invited to a group. Well, why are you not getting invited to a group? Because they're probably taking a rogue or a demon hunter. Rogues, they just do crazy damage, and people need that damage. Top two melee are, without question, rogue and demon hunter. There's other melee as well that are pretty good, like Windwalker Monk, and even Ret Pally's doing pretty well, but really the rogue and demon hunter are the top competition. If we compare the top rogues in North America plus Oceanic realms, you have the highest rogue at 3500, and then there's a bunch at 3300. The rogue in 26th place is 3000 IO. The reason I use 26th place is because if we compare this to warriors, I'm rank 26 in the NA and Oceanic servers. Not bad. I'm 1984 IO at rank 26. And so if you compare the top warrior North America Oceanic server, they're at 2800. The top warrior doesn't even beat a rank 26 rogue, which is again at 3000. So there's this huge discrepancy. And these are DPS warriors I'm of course talking about. Everyone wants a prot warrior. You say, well, why don't you play prot instead of Fury? Well, you gotta play what you enjoy, and it's definitely a challenge to compete as Fury, but you know, if you try hard, you can do it. The top Fury warrior on a Taiwan server, he's almost 3200, I believe, last time I checked, and so that's pretty good for a Fury warrior. Anyways, how viable is Fury? Well, considering what we just talked about, what does Fury actually bring? We bring Battle Shout, which can be replaced by a scroll at a 3% loss, or by the warrior tank that everyone wants. They can bring Battle Shout. Other than that, we have a single target stun, and a rallying cry, as well as a situationally useful AoE slow. We have a taunt, which can be useful at times, such as in King's Rest on third boss, and AoE Fear, which acts as an additional 90-second interrupt that we have. You should definitely be using Fear, call it out, and usually what happens is there's so much AoE damage going out that the Fear gets broken immediately, so you don't have to worry about mobs running all over the place, but you can break a dangerous cast, especially if you don't have that mob targeted. You can interrupt everything at once, interrupt multiple casts, especially if you don't have the guy targeted that you want to interrupt. Now if we compare that to Shroud, Cheat Death, Cloak, Tricks, and Zap, or a 5% magic damage, AoE Stun, Imprison, Darkness, it can be tough to get into the pugs for sure. I kind of laugh at rogues. You can get 1800 or 2k or whatever with playing with one hand. It's really easy. I see so many rogues who they proc Cheat Death almost on cooldown, and I don't die once in a dungeon. Neither characters die, but they're proccing Cheat Death like crazy. It's just such a nice safety net. Warrior can compete with Rogue and Demon Hunter in certain dungeons, but on large packs and reapings, the other classes that can do their AoE, it just pulls ahead because their skills do infinite AoE, infinite cleave, whereas we just can cleave 5 targets. I'll talk some theory crafting later about what maybe could help the warrior do better. One thing you can do to get yourself invited is if you start your own key, then you invite the other people, and you guarantee yourself a spot in the key rather than sitting in town looking for keys. Now what that requires is for you to be the leader, you to know the routes, and you need to ensure success of that key so that people will want to run with you. So you have to sort of take command and be the warrior, I suppose. Just not the tank warrior. Then they'll get to know you and they'll invite you to their runs, but if you just pug and sign up, you're going to get declined almost every single time. We need to really earn our stripes. It's, you know, who are they going to take? A 1700 rogue or a 2k warrior? I'm going to take the rogue every single time. Now, we can close the gap a little bit with professions. I'm a jewelcraft engineer. I get an awesome socketed ring and keys to open gates in Tol Dagor. So that kind of makes rogues a little less needed. People are always looking for someone to open keys or open the locks. And I have perhaps the best Mythic Plus helmet for the Azure helmet in Mythic Plus, the engineering helmet. And I get a battle res, and I've saved a couple keys due to my battle res being the only one. So let's look at our what's the best Azurite traits. You pretty much know this by now. You want 1 Simmering Rage, 1 Unbridled Ferocity, and a bunch of Cold Steel Hot Blood. Reckless Flurry is okay, but it doesn't help much in AoE. Barrage of Bombs is great, and it does 3 to 4% of overall damage. And Pulverizing Blows is okay for Mythic Plus 2. A note on Gathering Storm is if you're using Bladestorm, and I'll talk talent soon, I've not tried it, and it's not that great on Tyrannical because it really uses a lot of value. If I sim it, it doesn't sim very well, but hypothetically, it should be decent. But a second Cold Steel Hot Blood seems to beat it instead of having this Gathering Storm for Mythic Plus. The amount of strength it gives you, I think, makes you do like 10% more damage on your Bladestorm. It's really not that great. Other traits include Swirling Sands and Infinite Fury, which are pretty decent, and try to get Overwhelming Power. Heed My Call is okay, and so is Unstable Flames, actually. Let's talk trinkets. The best trinkets are Vial of Animated Blood and Gore Crusted Butcher's Block. Vial syncs up perfectly with Recklessness, and using that Strength trinket with Bladestorm makes your Bladestorm do a heck of a lot more damage, which is really good, especially with like Reaping. There's a lot of other options. Everchill Anchor from Jaina will do about 3 to 4% of your total damage. I have a item level 400 one. It's pretty good on fortified weeks. Not as good on tyrannical weeks where the trash dies really fast before the trash can get a 10 stack. Compare that to my 395 disc from Uldir, which does like 2 to 2.5% of my damage. The Everchill Anchor is a pretty solid choice. I have Razan and the Gizmo thing off of Megadork are options too. And I wish that the Grong's trinket didn't split the damage. It would be a really cool trinket in Mythic Plus, but unfortunately, it's junk. Now there is one other trinket, and you're likely to think that this one sucks, but Methrex Fang it's actually okay, especially on a fortified week. In something like a Motherload, it can do 6% of my overall damage. And while the tank's gathering everything up, and he doesn't really have aggro on it, you can use Mechreth's Fang and hit all these mobs with this dot, and then you can get into your rotation. So it's not like you're wasting time sitting there casting this trinket over the 2.1 seconds. So it's actually a decent trinket on certain dungeons like Motherload, Waycrest, and things like that. It requires some micromanaging, big brain use, whereas the Anchor doesn't, the Everchill Anchor. But if it's all you have, if you're so unlucky to get a 420 Mechreths or something, and you don't have a block or a vial, it's viable. So if it's all you have, consider it, try it out. So let's take a look at my gear here. I'm 417 equipped. I do have a 420 the set ring that goes with the shroud here that I use. It takes me like 416 equipped if I'm in a dungeon such as Motherload, King's Rest, or Atoll, which is kind of funky. It's a good set in those dungeons. So first my Azurite. I use the Engineering Helmet, and I'm using Unbridled Ferocity and Barrage of Bombs, Overwhelming Power, and it's got an Absorb Shield. This is a great helmet. I'm lucky enough to have the Cathraxi Binders pauldrons. Again, we have a Cold Steel Hot Rod, bleh, Swirling Sands, and another Overwhelming Power, and an Absorb Shield. This is great. And then Breastplate of the Deathbound, Simmering Rage, Cold Steel Hot Blood, Overwhelming Power, and another Absorb Shield. So these Absorb Shields really help survivability, Mythic Plus, and I've got really the best traits I can hope for here. So this is a great setup for Mythic Plus. If you're lucky enough to have this, there's other options. Crit Haste, okayish gloves, and belt. I would prefer some different stats on these two. Legs are fine, boots are fine. I've got a 425 ring, unfortunately no socket. This ring seems exactly the same as a 400 socketed ring, unfortunately. Here's that great jewel crafting ring. We've got our wonderful, wonderful trinkets. A Gatiku I'd like a better offhand still, and I'm lucky enough to have a 425 main hand. So that's my gear. Talents, pretty standard. Don't even really need to talk about this much more. We've already kind of discussed the Dragon Roar and Bladestorm thing here, which is Bladestorm's twice the damage, twice the cooldown. Dragon Roar, essentially half the damage, half the cooldown. But what if you have Bladestorm and you're holding Bladestorm for 30 seconds for the next pull? Well, you could have gotten a Dragon Roar off, so perhaps you can get more Dragon Roars off in a dungeon, meaning more damage than Bladestorm. However, Bladestorm is very concentrated damage. The top warrior, Tomboy, almost 3200. He uses Dragon Roar. I've experimented with both. I kind of like Bladestorm. They're both really good. I'll tell you why later. Some tricks why I use Bladestorm. How it can make you ignore some mechanics, which is really cool. One thing I use here is Opie. So just a little shift and then a mouse click. And I've got my keys for opening gates. I've got my battle res. I've got Jeeves, Skystep, Swiftness, various gear sets, battle res, or fake battle res, real battle res. So you can have different things at a quick click of a button. So for the rotation, I really don't need to go over rotation, but you will of course use Whirlwind and then two other spells between it, prioritizing Bloodthirst for the Cold Steel Hot Blood procs. Find the low HP mob and use Execute to cleave Execute onto other mobs. Plan your cooldowns, use them often. Helps to know the pulls, so you just have to get like an idea, the mastery of the dungeon. How long's a mob or a group going to take to die so that your cooldowns are up for the next group, that kind of thing. You don't want to use a cooldown on a small pull and then not have it for a big pull. Lastly, I've done the math and some experiments, and on large pulls such as 20 plus mobs, which really only occurs when there's like raping, Whirlwind damage overtakes your normal cleave rotation. So then you're better off to just Whirlwind constantly, use Bloodthirst for Enrage procs, and in addition to that, you're going to use your Rampage when you have Rampage. And then when you enrage, you're going to spam Whirlwind 3 times in a row when you have like 20, 30, 40 mobs on you. And this is going to just do more damage. It's only going to happen a couple times in a dungeon, in some specific dungeons. It's not going to happen often. This is like big brain micromanaging, and you don't get that much more out of doing it, but it is more damage. And before I get into some tips and tricks that we can use our warrior abilities to kind of do some funky stuff that takes it to the next level, what could Blizzard do to make warrior compete with a rogue or a demon hunter? Well, with a rogue, their Blade Fury lets all of their skills hit every mob near them, whereas our Whirlwind buff lets us use our next two skills to hit 5 mobs. If that Whirlwind buff let us hit an infinite amount of targets, That's probably the easiest thing they could do. What else could they do? Maybe there's some sort of talent or a Azurite trait that makes our whirlwind do significantly more damage and make it a more powerful skill to use in Mythic Plus. Just an idea. What if there's some crit talent thing that makes Blade Storm become a very short cooldown? Maybe your Blade Storm crits reduce its cooldown by 5 or 10 seconds at a time, where you can Blade Storm into another Blade Storm, into another Blade Storm. It could be fun. It prevents you from being able to interrupt. Just some ideas. Probably the best thing would be to make your Whirlwind buff cleave an infinite amount of targets. That'd be the easiest change. So some tips and tricks. With Razan, we can use our Blade Storm to immune the fear. So you're going to charge in, and during his first cast of fear, halfway through the cast, you're going to use Blade Storm while you're enraged. This will prevent you from getting feared. Next fear you have Berserker Rage, and you just alternate them. And you never ever ever have to run out for Razan. And you're going to do really good damage on Razan, as long as he doesn't chase you, which that doesn't happen too often. Dazar, the last boss of King's Rest, you can Blade Storm to Fear Immune. It's a very fast cast, and you have to kind of micromanage, and when he's about to do it, proc your Enrage, and then when he casts it, it's a very fast cast, hit Blade Storm, and you can be immune to fear, and then Berserker Rage the next one. It's micromanaging, big brain, but it can help a little bit. And maybe you can time the Heroic Leap to not take damage from the Quaking Leap that he does. I'm not 100% sure on that. There used to be a lot of abilities in Legion that you could leap away from and not take damage from, and they were actually pretty much mandatory to do to survive the high keys in Legion. You can Shrine the Living Current with Blade Storm when he does his Rising Tides, and you don't get tossed up into the air. You're probably going to skip that mob and never do it, but it's something you can do. You can also leap past the Living Current. That's not really something you need to be able to do unless you're running back or something because you died during a skip. Because while you can leap past it, no one else can, and so it's not super useful. But if you die and you need to run back, and the group skipped the Living Current and they don't want to use a res, you can run back, leap to them, and get back into the group. Blade Storm prevents the Coin Pummeler, the first boss in Motherlode, from knocking you back. So when he's about to do his knockback, you can pop a Blade Storm and you don't get knocked back because you're only going to have one charge, and running back into him sucks. Toldagor, you should be able to Heroic Leap at the right time to avoid upheaval damage, run out of the group, then leap at the last second, and then the upheaval should be dodged. I haven't been able to do this yet. I only found out about it recently, but people can blink and do various things to get out, and we should be able to do the same. You can Blade Storm to clear the sand traps on that boss, but if the group moves in a circle and kites the boss properly, that shouldn't be an issue, and just don't stand in a sand trap when it ends because you'll get stunned. It's kind of risky to do. Probably shouldn't bother doing it. The Soulbound Goliath roots. If you're enraged and there's a root cast going out, you can pop Blade Storm, and either the roots are going to get cast on someone beside you and you'll cleave it down with Blade Storm, or the roots will get cast on you, but because you're immune to the roots, they don't get cast on you at all. So it's kind of micromanaging, big brain stuff, but you can try those things out. That's basically the guide for you. Some gear, some tips, and some complaining and some theory crafting. Hope it helps. I've got some videos up just about every dungeon I've done in Mythic Plus. Some of them I perform well, some of them not so well. You know, always trying to improve and learn, share my tips with you so that you guys can, you know, do a little bit better as well and get to the next level of Mythic Plus, whether that's going from 1k to 1500 or, 1500 to 1700. Hopefully this video helped. There's something you can learn. And if not, if there's something I missed, something you want to know, ask in the comments and hopefully I can help you out. Thanks for watching. Hope this was of some sort of value. See ya.
See ya.